With the second round of the playoffs now being done, it's time to take a look at the teams that were eliminated and see what's next. While for some teams, what's next for them is not that major, others are just stuck in their current situation or have to take a long, hard look in the mirror this offseason. When it comes to what's next for the Pistons is they need to add more reliable three-point shooters to the roster that are also not complete weaklings defensively. Cade for a majority of this playoff run was incredible, and he was doing this while the spacing he had to work with was looking like straight out of the early 2000s. Detroit does have shooters in Duncan Robinson and Kevin Huerter, while Robinson showed during this playoff run why he's one of the premier marksmen in the NBA. He's not a bad defender per se, but he's still a defender teams will and can mismatch hunt in the playoffs. Kevin Huerter was already having a down year from deep, but he was somehow even worse in the playoffs. And with the Magic attacking him constantly on the other end, on top of him getting injured, the Pistons' big pickup from the deadline was a non-factor during this playoff run. Tobias Harris had to scale up and be basically their second option this run because Detroit was that desperate for any consistent offensive production outside of Cade. Tobias, specifically with his outside shooting, is more of a mid three-point volume kind of guy, and this was proven because his shot from deep would come and go during this run. The other outside shooting options in Dennis Jenkins and Javonte Green struggled as well, and we already know Duren and Asar provide no outside shooting. And Karis LeVert, who's another outside shooting option and a guy that can provide shot creation in spurts, wasn't consistent. Detroit getting three-point shooters that can shoot it at a high volume and just be neutral defensively is something they also need to add this summer. But most importantly, they need to add a secondary creator outside of Cade that can help take some of the offensive load off of him. This issue was a well-known fact throughout this entire season, and it's reared its ugly head during this playoff run. There was times in both series Cade was just throwing lazy passes or just losing control of the ball out of nowhere, but those kind of turnovers happened more frequently because as the game went along, Cade would get worn down, since he was the only guy capable of consistently creating offense for not only himself, but everyone else. Cade also needs to become a more consistent good pull-up three-point shooter in order to take that next step. The fact Trajan Langdon didn't trade for Ayo Dosunmu or Kobe White, who would have given them another ball handler and creator, is baffling, especially because he traded Jaden Ivey to the Bulls for Kevin Huerter. You're telling me he didn't know both White and Ayo Dosunmu were on the market? Alright, man. Anyway, they cannot leave this offseason without adding a secondary creator outside of Cade, and they should be targeting Kawhi and MPJ. When it comes to Kawhi, he would be the ideal target. He's coming off a first-team All-NBA caliber season and would give Detroit a guy who can create his own offense at an efficient rate. Kawhi would not only just take some of the offensive load off of Cade, you could argue Kawhi would be the number one option even with his limitations as a passer and playmaker. But guess what? Kawhi would have Cade to handle most of those passing and playmaking responsibilities. With Kawhi being injury prone and most importantly being on the last year of his contract, Detroit could get him for some salary filler and 2 first-round picks. When it comes to MPJ, he would also fit well in this team, giving them an infusion of three-point shooting they desperately need. MPJ is a high-level shooter on spot-ups and shooting on the move, even though he lacks the same level of ball handling, shot creation, passing, and playmaking Kawhi would bring. With how good he is off the ball, he's a seamless fit, and with his shooting gravity, MPJ would elevate the Pistons' half-court offense. And Detroit could get him for a similar-ish package they could for Kawhi, with MPJ being on the last year of his deal. Now, the Jalen Duren extension conversation, while Duren is definitely not going to be getting a supermax this summer, he's still going to get a max. Duren played terrible against Orlando in the first round. He was thoroughly outplayed by Wendell Carter Jr. He was the third best big man in that series behind Wendell and his own teammate Isaiah Stewart. And in this series, he played arguably even worse than he did against Orlando. He was at best the fourth best big man in this series behind Mobley, Jared Allen, and Isaiah Stewart. Hell, you could argue Paul Reed played better than him in this series. Duren needs to take a big step in his game. When it comes to defense, he needs to give more good defensive play more consistently. And he's shown flashes of a mid-range game, even self-creating some of those mid-range looks, but those flashes need to turn into consistent plays because the Magic and Cavs game plan to take away his roles, and he had no answer to counter that consistently. In addition to the other things I talked about, Duren also needs to meet the expectations of whatever his max contract will be if the Pistons want to become a legit contender. Lastly, when it comes to who the Pistons should let walk and keep this summer outside of obviously re-signing Jalen Duren, they need to re-sign Tobias Harris, no question. This brother was absolutely hooping this playoff run. Tobias' mid-range shot making and and mismatch attacking was so valuable to Detroit during this playoff run. I know he could produce at this level of play consistently in a playoff setting. Detroit bringing Tobias back on a 2-year deal for $20 to $22 million per year is more than fair. When it comes to Kevin Huerter, they should just let him walk in free agency. Even when he's healthy, he's at best the 10th man in the rotation. And when he's not making his shots from deep, he provides a little to no value anywhere else. When it comes to Javonte Green, they should re-sign him on a 2-year deal for $8 to $10 million per year at the most. He only takes shots from deep off the catch and does it on a low volume, and in general he's only an average shooter from deep off the catch, but he provides plus value as a transition scorer and as a good defender that can defend positions 2 through 4 and as a good defensive playmaker. What's next for Minnesota is first off re-signing Ayo Dosunmu. They can't let him walk this summer. Since they traded for Ayo at this past trade deadline, he's given them what they were missing in their guard room, which is a guard that can handle the ball, initiate the offense, and create offense for others at a solid to good rate, allowing some of the ball handling and playmaking load to be taken off of Ant's shoulders. Ayo is also a good shooter from deep off the catch, giving him the ability to play in lineups alongside Ant as that other guard. Ayo also provides positive value as a transition scorer. Defensively, he's not good, but he's not a disaster where he's unplayable in the playoffs, and they have the defensive infrastructure to mask his flaws defensively. Minnesota re-signing Ayo to a 3-year deal for $15 to $18 million per year is more than fair. When it comes to Bones Highland, they should just let him walk. While he provides value as a microwave scorer off the bench, he's a below average or at best neutral defender, and his lack of ability to get to and score inside the arc making him reliant on pull-up threes. He slowly got cut out of Minnesota's rotation despite Dante DiVincenzo tearing his Achilles in Game 4 of the first round against the Nuggets, and Ayo having to miss Game 6 of the first round against Denver, and missing Game 1 of this series. Letting Bones walk, and with Dante tearing his Achilles, this opens up more minutes for Terrence Shannon Jr., who in flashes has shown he can be a real rotational player for a playoff team, and I think Shannon can develop into one. But with Dante being out for all of next season, and with Bones probably leaving this offseason, Minnesota still needs to add another guard to their bench that can initiate the offense, create offense for others, and have some on-ball creation ability and play well off the ball, which I believe is the kind of player they should target with their first-round pick. And players I would like for them to target is Malik Thomas, Christian Anderson, or Tyler Tanner. Next for Minnesota is Ant still needs to grow as a passer and playmaker. While he's taking big strides in this department compared to a few years ago, he still has room to grow when it comes to processing the defense and making the right pass instead of forcing a contested shot. Ant, as of right now, can only fully dominate games as a scorer instead of dominating as both a passer and playmaker and a scorer. Lastly, the Julius Randle conversation. Man, he was bad in this series, and this playoff run as a whole, he was underwhelming. In this series in particular, when he couldn't find a matchup to attack like he did towards the tail end of Game 1, he was struggling to score. On top of him falling back into his bad passing habits and his defensive effort being up and down, Randle was Minnesota's 5th best player in this series behind Ant, Rudy, J.D. McDaniels, and Naz Reid. And that is simply inexcusable, especially with Randle being under contract for $30+ million, and next season he has a player option for $35 million, which brings up the question, should they trade Randle to bring in a new co-star for Ant, which I completely understand. And there is a somewhat realistic package where they can get Kawhi for Randle, Naz Reid, and 2 first-round picks, but I don't think Minnesota trades Naz Reid, and that makes it more complicated because then you would have to get a third team involved to get Kawhi to Minnesota. Unless Minnesota can pull off a Kawhi trade, them just re-signing Ayo, letting Bones walk this offseason, using their first-round pick to add another bench ball-handling guard is the only realistic way they can improve this roster. Doing that and running it back with mainly the same team is all they can really do. Now, before we get into the rest of the video, I would appreciate it if you could like the video as it helps the video perform better in the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to the channel. If you like NBA content, this is the place where you will want to be. What's next for my favorite team, the Lakers, is first adding more high-end athletes and adding more players that can make a positive impact on both sides of the floor. When this roster is healthy, I clearly see 6 of the 9 players who are key parts of the rotation are not high-end athletes. This shows up the most defensively, as teams with players who have that high-end speed and burst can get rim pressure on us at will. There was so many times this series we would send a double team towards Shea and he would just blow past the double teaming defenders so fast it looked like he was moving in 2x speed. In a Western Conference that has teams in OKC, the Spurs, and Minnesota that have multiple high-end athletes in the rotation and they're not going anywhere no time soon, your best high-end athlete being a man in his 40s is not gonna cut it. In general, this roster is severely lacking players who can make positive impact on both sides of the floor. Luka, Reeves, LeBron, Rui, Ayton, Luke Kennard are positives offensively, but are either average, below average, or straight up negatives defensively. Jake LaRavia, Vando, and Jackson Hayes are positives defensively, but are either average, below average, or a straight up negative offensively. The only players currently on this roster that are positives on both sides on the floor are Marcus Smart and LeBron when he's engaged defensively. We're in a conference with OKC, San Antonio, and Minnesota who are spearheaded by young stars that are positives on both sides of the floor and are surrounded with supporting casts that have multiple young players or players in their prime who are positives on both sides of the floor. Marcus Smart and a 41-year-old who's not engaged all the time defensively being your only players that are positives on both sides of the floor are not going to cut it. What's also next for the Lakers is deciding who they should extend, how much they should extend those players for, and who they should let walk, which starts with Austin Reeves. While Reeves is not going to be getting a supermax, he will be getting a max this offseason. I understand Reeves came back from an oblique strain in Game 5 against Houston, and he was dealing with a toe sprain in the first round last year against Minnesota, but this is another playoff run where he didn't provide the same value as he does in the regular season. You could see his lack of athleticism cause him to be overwhelmed when facing the high-end athletes and heavy amounts of ball pressure Minnesota provided last year and Houston and OKC did this year, on top of him being hunted defensively, which is why I would give him a 4-year deal in the range from 31 to 40 million per year at the most. Reeves is one of the best pick and roll creators in the league, is a good off-ball player, he's a good offensive fit next to Luka, and this is well proven in the numbers, but a Reeves and Luka backcourt is a below average backcourt defensively and both will be targeted in the playoffs. When it comes to LeBron, I would give him a 2-year deal in the range from 20 to 25 million per year at the most. Now, don't get me wrong, LeBron is still a good player and it's impressive he's still this impactful at 41 years old, but as I've already mentioned, LeBron is only a positive on both sides of the floor when he's engaged defensively and his effort there can come and go. Not to mention, he can't get to the rim at the same rate like he used to even 2 years ago, and his free ball has been hit or miss for the past 4 years, which diminishes his offensive value some since he's become more reliant on his outside shooting with his first step and burst declining. The Lakers already have enough offensive firepower in Luka and Reeves, and their defense is actually better with Luka and Reeves on the floor without LeBron. I appreciate LeBron for taking us out the gutter because that's where we were in 2018 and helping bring a championship back to the Lakers, but if he's asking for anything more than a 2-year deal for 20 to 25 million per year, sayonara brother, appreciate your services. When it comes to Marcus Smart, he's simply just a winning basketball player. He's a positive on both sides of the floor, he does all the little things that impact winning, while also providing another ball handler and above average passer and playmaker that can help Luka and Reeves with some of that load. But Smart is approaching his mid-30s. This was his first season in 3 years where he's been relatively healthy, and his shot selection can be erratic at times. That's why I see bringing Smart back on a 3-year deal for 15 to 18 million per year is more than fair. We also need to get a true good starting caliber center. While Ayton had his positive moments, he also had his fair share of frustrating moments. That reminds you why he's more of an above average to good backup center than a starting center that's good enough for a team to make a deep playoff run. And with Jackson Hayes, he can start in a pinch, but in all actuality, he's an average backup center that's at his best playing 15 to 18 minutes a night. When it comes to options I would like for the Lakers to target as that true good starting caliber center are Nick Claxton and Jared Allen. Both are good lob targets, which is the kind of center you need to pair with Luka, and they're both good rim protectors. Now, Nick Claxton is a better switch defender and defending in space than Allen. While Allen is decent at switching and defending in space, he's more of a big that plays drop coverage. If we could get either of the two and then re-signing Ayton or Hayes on a fair 2-year deal and make them the backup center, I would be ecstatic. But in the scenario, you can't bring back one of Ayton or Hayes to be the backup 5. Center options I would like for them to target with our first round pick is Henry Visar, Ruben Chinalu, or Terrence Reed Jr. We also just need more athletic front court players in general, and players in that archetype I would like for them to target in the draft is Morez Johnson Jr. When it comes to Rui, let him walk in free agency. While yes, he can shoot threes at an efficient clip, he only takes them when he's wide open. Majority of the time, he sees a defender closing out, even though if he shoots the three, it would still be an open shot. He pump fakes into a 1 or 2 dribble mid-range pull-up. Like yes, it's good he makes them at the clip he does, but it would be so much more valuable if he took 6 threes a game and shot 38%. Instead of taking 4 threes a game, shooting 42%, Rui also struggles to attack mismatches. There was multiple times in the first round against the Rockets, he was struggling to capitalize when Reed Shepherd was guarding him. He's a poor to below average ball handler and passer and playmaker. Defensively, he's bad. He's too slow to keep anyone in front of him. He misses basic rotations on the regular, and his off-ball awareness is bad. When it comes to Luke Kennard, he's one of the best shooters from deep percentage-wise in NBA history, but he has a similar problem to Rui where he only takes them when he's wide open. It would be way more valuable if Luke would take 6 to 7 shots from deep a night and shoot 39% instead of taking 4 shots from deep a night and shooting 44%. But unlike Rui, Luke provides value as a tertiary playmaker, making that extra pass to keep the defense in rotation or attacking off the advantages someone else creates, which makes him an ideal fit next to Luka and Reeves, as both will create a ton of advantages for him to attack and both will get defenses in rotation, allowing Luke's tertiary passing skills to shine. On the other side of the floor though, Luke is a negative defensively. Teams will hunt him relentlessly in the playoffs. With all that in mind, I think paying Luke a 3-year deal for 10 to 13 million per year is more than fair. Also, shout out to JJ, man. He coached his ass off these playoffs. I thought we had no chance of beating the Rockets, and he had this team being actually competitive with OKC. To me, this season, JJ proved why it's more than fair to say he's a top 10 coach in the NBA, or just outside the top 10 as the 11th or 12th best coach. With the Sixers, what's next for them is just bringing back mainly the same roster and just trying to improve around the margins and hoping for a healthy Embiid playoff run. After Nick Nurse struggled to find room for Jared McCain in the rotation this season, and McCain having a slow start coming back from tearing his meniscus, Daryl Morey thought it was best to sell high on McCain. Then he went to the title favorite in OKC and they found a role for him, and Morey wasn't able to use the capital from the McCain trade or the new available flexibility from the trade to make another move at the deadline to help improve this roster around the margins, and their lack of depth reared its ugly head in the second round against the Knicks. Man, they sure could have used a certain someone to provide a scoring punch off the bench, but I digress. Which opens us up to the hoping for a healthy Embiid playoff run part of this. I mean, Embiid was phenomenal against the Celtics in the first round, and I'm happy he got to have that moment and exercise the demons he has with Boston. But as soon as Embiid gives you a sliver of hope, this year could be the year he and the Sixers make a deep playoff run, his body fails him again, and the Sixers' chance of a deep playoff run closes just as fast as it opened for a mere second. But this roster at the top will largely stay the same. They're not trading Maxey or Edgecombe because that's their future for the post-Embiid era. Even if they wanted to trade Embiid this offseason, would anybody actually want him? For one, his injury concerns, and not to mention his contract. Paul George played well this playoff run, slotted in as that third guy or even fourth guy if Edgecombe was feeling it in a certain game. But when Morey gave PG this contract, they paid him more to be than their fourth best guy. That PG contract is almost untradeable unless Philly attaches multiple first round picks for a bottom team to take it. All they can do is improve on the margins by replacing Andre Drummond's backup center minutes with Adem Bona, give more minutes to Dominic Barlow, who I believe is an underrated role player, on top of adding more front court depth in the draft. Front court options I would like for them to target is Allen Graves or Morez Johnson Jr. And Kelly Oubre has a player option he may or may not decline, but they need more wing help in general, so wing options I would like them to target in the draft is Cam Carr. Try to re-sign one or both of Kelly Oubre and Quentin Grimes to reasonable deals, and hope for a relatively healthy Embiid playoff run, which honestly feels like a long shot. And we can't move on to the next team without talking about Philly parting ways with Daryl Morey, which I understand why they made this decision. While I don't think Morey is a terrible GM, the Sixers' biggest problem is they're lacking depth, and Morey either traded away or cut multiple players that would have been good role players for this team. Obviously, we know he traded Jared McCain to OKC at this past trade deadline in a move where Morey Morey believes he sold high. Yeah, okay. But Morey also waived Isaiah Joe in 2022 to get under the tax. Then the following year, he waived Julian Champagnie, and he waived Champagnie in order to free up a two-way roster spot for Mac McClung so McClung could participate in the dunk contest. Morey gave away 3 guys who could have been real rotational players for this team right now. As we're seeing with McCain and Joe in OKC be high-level three-point shooters, and with Champagnie, he turned not only into a quality role player, but a legit good starter for the Spurs, who are the 2nd seed in the West this season. If you're still here right now at this point of the video, I appreciate you watching the entire video. Don't forget to like the video, as the basketball should appear when you do, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about what's next for the teams that got eliminated in the 2nd round. See you on the next one.